You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
It started like most things do, small. Easy to dismiss. But looking back, that moment in her car was the first crack in what I thought was a solid foundation. And once a crack appears, even the strongest structure is living on borrowed time. That Sunday evening was typical enough. Emily had a faculty meeting earlier in the day, some leadership development thing for her school's department heads. She was supposed to be home by 6. I figured we'd have a lazy dinner, maybe watch something on Netflix, and call it a night early. I was already in sweats, half watching a basketball game, half scrolling through my phone, when I realized she hadn't come back yet. At 6:45 I *T her text. Me, you almost home? Read at 6:46. No response. At 7:03 she walked through the door, hair slightly windblown, wearing that deep green coat I always told her looked great on her. She smiled too quickly and kissed my cheek like she was trying to hit a social cue, not actually connect. Sorry, meeting ran long, she said, already slipping off her heels. They love to hear themselves talk. I nodded. All good. I was going to order something unless you wanted to cook. You choose, she replied, heading toward the bedroom, pulling her phone from her bag. She didn't even glance back. A little off, but not wildly so. Emily's always been good at masking stress. She's a teacher, after all. She knows how to smile through chaos. It wasn't until later, when I went out to her car to grab my phone charger, that I saw it. The box. It was on the back seat, tucked partway under a reusable grocery tote. The lid had shifted slightly, just enough to reveal what was inside. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't suspicious, not then. I just reached in and moved the tote aside. That's when I saw the scarf. Not just any scarf. It was thick, high-end cashmere by the feel of it. Deep navy, subtle texture with a faint logo stitched at the edge. Not flashy. Just expensive. Next to it, nestled into the box like it had been curated for someone who appreciated taste over trend, was a bottle of cologne. The glass was dark, the lettering matte black. I picked it up and turned it over in my hand. It wasn't a scent I knew. And I'd know if it was one I used, it definitely wasn't. I wear clean citrusy stuff. This was darker. Smokier. More mature, I guess. More seductive. I put it down gently, trying not to think too hard. Maybe it was for her dad? Or her brother? No, her brother moved to Oregon and they hadn't spoken in over a year. I closed the box and left it where I found it, but my brain was already working double time. Back inside, she was curled up on the couch, blanket over her lap, scrolling on her phone with one leg tucked under the other. Hey, I said, trying to keep it casual. What's the gift box in your back seat? She didn't look up. Oh, that, she said, tapping at her screen. It's for a coworker. Zach. His birthday's next week. We all chipped in and Julie asked me to pick it up since she was out sick. Forgot to bring it in today. Her tone was calm. Breezy. Like she was telling me she'd forgotten the dry cleaning. Nice scarf, I said, watching her reaction. She gave a soft laugh, not really reacting. Yeah, he's always complaining about being cold in the faculty lounge. You all chipped in? Ma'am. Still tapping. Still scrolling. And the cologne? That finally got her to pause. Just for a second. Then, same deal. He always smells like whiteboard markers. Julie thought it'd be funny. Huh, I said, nodding slowly. Cool. She finally looked up. Why? No reason. Just saw it and wondered. She stared at me a beat too long. Then smiled. You're funny, she said, and went back to scrolling. I didn't push it. I told myself not to make a thing out of nothing. But in that moment, right there, I felt something twist in my gut. Not jealousy. Not anger. Just dislocation. Like I'd taken one step forward and the floor had shifted beneath me. I didn't say anything else about the box. I ordered Thai food and we spent the rest of the night like everything was fine. She laughed at something dumb on her phone, showed me a meme she thought was hilarious, and we watched 2 episodes of a show we both pretended to be into. When we went to bed, she curled against me like she always did, her head tucked just under my chin. But I couldn't sleep. My mind kept drifting back to the box. To the scarf. To the cologne that smelled like someone trying to be memorable. And maybe it really was for a coworker. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe Zach was just a guy she felt bad for, cold in the lounge, smelling like whiteboard markers. But here's the thing, I've met Zach. Once. Briefly. At her school's winter banquet. He seemed friendly, sure. Young. Athletic. The kind of guy who wears cologne like that. I remembered how Emily had introduced us with a quick, clipped, "This is Zach, he teaches gym." She hadn't mentioned he was the new sports coordinator. I remember now how she'd angled her body toward him when they spoke. How she laughed a little too hard at something he said. How I dismissed it at the time as me overthinking things. Insecure, maybe? But that night, lying in bed, her breathing soft and even, I stared at the ceiling and felt it, something subtle but undeniable. A shift. Like the gears of my life had slipped one tooth out of sync. It wasn't proof. It wasn't a confrontation. But it was the first time I really felt the difference between not knowing and not wanting to know. The next morning, I got up before she did. I made coffee, checked some emails, and sat quietly at the kitchen table watching steam rise from my mug. When she came down, wrapped in her robe, she kissed my cheek and thanked me for the coffee like she always did. And maybe that would have been enough if I hadn't already started replaying things in my head. The times she came home late but didn't seem tired. The way she suddenly started locking her phone when she left it in the kitchen. The new shampoo I smelled in her hair last week, something floral, not the stuff she's used for years. I didn't ask questions. I smiled. I said I'd see her after work. But something had cracked. I know myself. I'm not the guy who jumps to conclusions. I don't snoop and I don't accuse. But I pay attention. And once the quiet little voice inside me starts asking questions, it doesn't stop. And in that moment, watching her sip her coffee across from me, still scrolling through her phone, still smiling like nothing had changed, I knew something had. I just didn't know how far it would go. Yet, it's funny how your mind starts rearranging the past once suspicion plants itself in your head. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. But then the patterns started revealing themselves, not in loud, dramatic ways. Just little shifts. Barely noticeable unless you were looking. And after that night with the gift box, I started looking. The first thing I noticed was the laundry. Emily and I always did laundry together on Sunday nights. A small ritual we'd fallen into over the years. One of us would throw everything into the washer while the other folded what came out of the dryer. It wasn't a big deal, just another small cog in the wheel of marriage. But about a week after the scarf incident, I saw she'd started doing her own load early in the morning before work. "Did you wash a load already?" I asked one morning, seeing an empty laundry basket in the hall. "Oh yeah," she said without looking up from her makeup mirror. "Just a few things I needed for school." It didn't seem odd at the time. But then it happened again the next week. And the next. Always small loads. Always without telling me. Always before I woke up. Then there was the shampoo. She'd always used this lavender-scented brand, some cruelty-free, overpriced bottle with a cork cap. She made a whole speech about at Target once. But for the past few weeks, she'd come home with her hair smelling different. Not bad, just different. A little muskier. Warmer. Not something I'd ever seen in our shower. "Did you get new shampoo?" I asked one night when we were brushing our teeth. "Nope. Same stuff," she said quickly, then spit into the sink. "Why?" I shrugged. "Just smelled different." She smiled in the mirror. "You're getting too used to me." But that wasn't it. The scent was too consistent. And sometimes it lingered on her clothes too, like she'd leaned against someone who wore it. It wasn't just smells and laundry though. It was timing. Rhythm. Vibe. Emily had always been exhausted after work. Teaching takes it out of you, grading papers, wrangling teenagers, sitting through endless staff meetings. She'd come home, kick off her shoes, and crash on the couch, sometimes asleep before we even finished dinner. But lately, she was different. More energized. Like something had kicked her into a new gear. She'd come home glowing, not just smiling, but beaming. She was on her phone more too, texting while standing at the sink, hiding her screen when I came too close. And then she started calling off family plans. The big one was movie night with her sister's kids, a monthly tradition. Her niece Sadie had even called to ask what movie Emily was bringing. But that night, just an hour before we were supposed to leave, she claimed she had a migraine and needed to stay home. Told me to go without her. I did. And it was fine. But when I got back, the house was quiet. She was in bed, lights off. She didn't say much the next morning either. Just thanks for going and hope Sadie liked the movie. The next weekend, we were supposed to have dinner with our friends Kevin and Rachel. Emily texted me mid-afternoon that she had a last-minute parent conference at school. On a Saturday. I didn't even respond, I just canceled for both of us and sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours watching the sun crawl across the counter, wondering if I was crazy. But the thing that really got to me, the thing that twisted the knife, was how she started guarding her electronics. We've always been pretty open with that stuff. No passwords hidden. Phones face up. Laptops left in the living room. Not that we snooped, just nothing to hide. Until there was. Her phone started living in her back pocket or face down on the table. Her notifications were suddenly all silenced, and when she got texts, she didn't open them right away like she used to. She'd wait until I left the room. I caught her one night tapping out a long message while standing in the hallway. She jumped when she saw me. "Everything okay?" I asked, pretending not to notice the way she quickly locked the screen. "Yeah," she said, too fast. "Just Julie again. She's dealing with a nightmare parent." Julie, right? Even her laptop, which used to stay open in the living room during grading nights, now went upstairs with her. I'd walk in sometimes and see her close it quickly. Not slam it, not dramatically, but with that smooth, subtle motion that says I'm hiding something. I didn't say anything. Not then. I wasn't ready to confront her, not without real proof. But I'd started keeping notes. I know how that sounds. But when your gut's screaming at you and every instinct is telling you something's off, you start needing a paper trail, not for revenge, but for clarity. So I started tracking the times she left and came home. The reasons she gave. The changes in schedule. I even wrote down the brand of cologne from the box, figured maybe I'd find it again someday in a place it didn't belong. And I waited. One night, we were lying in bed and I tried something. I asked her what she wanted to do over spring break. "Maybe we could get away," I said. "Just you and me. Somewhere quiet. I could take time off too." She was scrolling through her phone and for a moment I thought she didn't hear me. Then, I don't know. The school might need me around. There's a training session they're pushing. That was it? "No, that sounds nice." "No, let me think about it." Just a soft no with her eyes still on her phone. I turned away and stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan. And I knew then I wasn't the center of her world anymore. I wasn't even orbiting it. One afternoon, maybe a week later, I came home early from work. Just a fluke power outage at the office. I didn't text her because I thought she'd still be at school. But her car was in the driveway. I walked in and heard movement upstairs. Footsteps. Then silence. I called. No answer at first. Then, "Hey, I'm just changing. Be down in a sec." Her voice was chipper. Forced. When she came down, she was dressed in a different top than she usually wore for work. No name badge. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She kissed me and asked if I wanted coffee like nothing was unusual. I didn't say anything. I just smiled and said sure. But something in her eyes told me she hadn't expected me home. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting each breath. Listening to her slow, steady rhythm beside me. And I thought about everything. The scarf. The cologne. The guarded phone. The private laptop. The skipped dinners. The sudden solo laundry. The fake meetings. The energy. The silence. The fact that her eyes didn't linger on mine the way they used to. The way she touched her phone more than she touched me. It was like trying to remember the moment a fire started after the house was already gone. You look at the ash and try to piece together which spark lit the match. And still, I said nothing. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. Because part of me still wanted to believe there was another explanation. That maybe I was the one pulling away. That maybe she was just tired. Or stressed. Or overwhelmed. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't stress. This wasn't distraction. This wasn't drifting apart. This was deception. And now I was the one waiting, quiet, careful, and calculating, watching for the moment everything would finally fall apart. The funny thing about betrayal is how polite it can look from the outside. Not a thunderclap or a screaming match. Sometimes it just shows up at a dinner table, dressed nicely, smiling at you with the same mouth that's been lying for months. I never expected it to happen like this. Emily's mom, Susan, invited us to dinner one Sunday. Nothing unusual about that. We did these family nights every few weeks. Homemade food, oversweet wine, stories that had been told a dozen times already. Safe. Familiar. A ritual. Emily mentioned it that morning while brushing her hair. "Dinner at Mom's tonight." "Just the usual," she said. "She's trying that new chicken marsala recipe." I nodded. "Cool. What time?" She hesitated. "Barely. But I caught it. 6. "Maybe come a little later," she said, not meeting my eyes. She wanted me to help prep. "Want me to drive?" "No," she said quickly. "I'll already be there. Just meet us after." That was the first red flag. Emily hated being early to anything, especially anything that involved prep. She'd once brought boxed mashed potatoes to Thanksgiving just to avoid peeling them by hand. But I didn't argue. I just said all right. See you there. The house was only 20 minutes away and I took my time getting there. Stopped to get a bottle of wine on the way, something middle shelf that Susan liked. When I pulled up, the driveway was mostly empty, just Emily's car and another SUV I didn't recognize. I rang the bell. It took a moment and then Susan opened the door. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "Andrew." "Evening," I said, holding up the wine. "Brought your favorite." She hesitated at the door, not stepping back, not inviting me in. Listen, she said carefully, it might not be the best night. I blinked. What? She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. Her voice dropped to that hushed, parental tone that's somehow both condescending and performative. I think, for everyone's comfort, maybe it's better if we do this another time. I looked past her. I could see the dining room table already set, plates, napkins, silverware, a centerpiece of fake lemons. Through the hallway I saw people. Familiar ones, Emily's cousins, her aunt, a few people from her school. People who knew me, who had eaten at my table. I wasn't aware this was a private thing, I said quietly. She gave that tight-lipped smile, the one she used at PTA meetings and when she lied about being just disappointed. It's complicated, she said. Where's Emily? She's inside, she said. But let's not make this more awkward, okay? That's when I knew. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Just stood there on the porch holding a bottle of wine like a fool, trying to figure out how the hell we got here. And then, behind her, I saw him. Zach. Standing in the hallway like he belonged there. Wearing a button-up, holding a beer. The same guy from her school. The same name she'd thrown around in excuses, birthday gifts, parent conferences, faculty events. He was smiling at someone off camera, his back mostly turned, but then he saw me. And just like that his smile dropped. I saw it all in a second. The flinch in his eyes. The way he shifted like a kid caught stealing cookies. Then I saw Emily. She was sitting at the far end of the table. Her hair was pulled back, her posture perfectly straight. She looked up, saw me through the entryway and froze. She didn't stand. Didn't wave. Didn't say a word. She looked down at her plate and adjusted her napkin. I wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like. That there was a reason I was standing outside my mother-in-law's house while another man took my seat at the table. But there wasn't. No one else at the table reacted. No one called out. No one got up to greet me. They all just looked away. Shifted in their chairs. Pretended they hadn't seen what they'd seen. Susan stepped closer. Andrew, really, she whispered. Let's talk tomorrow. It's better that way. I looked at her. Really looked. Her face didn't hold regret or apology. It held strategy. Like this had all been decided already. Like this was cleanup. I nodded once. Set the bottle of wine gently on the porch railing. And turned around. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't slam the door. Didn't demand answers. There was nothing left to say. Back in the car, I gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. My heart was hammering, my mouth dry. The image kept playing in my head on loop. Emily sitting beside Zach, eyes down, saying nothing. Not even trying to stop me. Not even trying to explain. I didn't drive home right away. I just sat there, staring at the windshield, trying to understand what kind of person lets something like that happen in front of family. In front of friends. In front of me. Eventually, I pulled away from the curb and drove. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. I stayed at a cheap hotel on the other side of town. Didn't sleep much. I kept checking my phone, part of me expecting Emily to text, to call, to explain. She didn't. Not that night. Not the next morning. Silence. By noon, I'd gone over it 100 different ways. I thought about the little signs. The way Susan had been more clipped with me lately. How Emily's cousin had stopped liking my posts on social media. How people started pulling away slowly, politely. Like they knew. Like they were choosing sides long before I realized there were sides to choose. It was orchestrated. They weren't caught off guard by me showing up. They were surprised I'd even been invited. Like someone forgot to take me off the list. I went home that evening still not sure what I'd say to her. But she wasn't there. Her side of the closet was intact, her keys still on the hook, but she wasn't home. I sat at the kitchen table, lights off, thinking. I thought about our wedding, how Susan gave a speech about me being steady, dependable, loyal. I thought about how Emily had clung to my hand during every funeral, every scare, every hard moment. I thought about the 5 years I spent building this life with her. The house. The memories. The routines. The way we used to leave sticky notes on the fridge with inside jokes. All of it felt like a bad investment now. Like I'd poured everything into a future that had quietly been rerouted. Eventually, I stood up and went to the closet. Found her tablet tucked behind a stack of old cookbooks. Still synced to our cloud account. She hadn't thought to unsync it. That was her mistake. And I was about to find out just how deep this betrayal went. I didn't want to do it. That's the part people don't understand. No one starts a marriage thinking they'll end up combing through their partner's digital footprint like a detective with a personal grudge. But that's where I found myself, at the kitchen table, lights still off, her tablet glowing in front of me like it held the answers to questions I wasn't ready to ask out loud. It took maybe a minute to bypass the lock screen. Emily always used the same 4-digit PIN she'd had since college. She was careful with other things, her makeup drawer, her grades, the way she folded towels, but she never imagined I'd look through her devices. That was my role, right? The stable one. The steady one. The one who didn't ask questions. Until I did. The tablet was still synced to our shared cloud, photos, messages, backups. Everything she thought she deleted from her phone was still lingering here like ghosts refusing to leave. The first thing I checked was the deleted messages folder. And that's when I felt it, my stomach tightening, throat drying, pulse hammering in my ears. Because there they were. Not one or two. Dozens. Scattered over months. Conversations with Zach. Some short. Some long. Some reading like journal entries. One read. Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about your hands in my hair. I needed that. I needed you. Another. He suspects nothing. But I hate lying. I wish we didn't have to hide. Some were less romantic. Colder. Calculated. Letting Andrew keep the kids might be easier. He's stable. He'll make it clean. That one knocked the breath out of me. Kids? We didn't have any yet, but we've been talking about trying in the fall. She even picked names. Wrote them in a journal she kept by the bed. Now she was planning to hand them over before they even existed. The photos were worse. Selfies in a hotel mirror. Her and Zach with room service in the background. Her in that same green coat she wore to Susan's dinner, leaning against him like she didn't have a husband at home who folded her laundry and kissed her forehead every morning before work. I couldn't stop scrolling. There were *TS of reservations made under fake names. 2 nights at a boutique hotel in Asheville. A weekend conference in Charlotte that I remember helping her pack for, carefully tucking her favorite flats into the side pocket of her suitcase. She hadn't even unpacked when she came home. Just tossed the bag in the laundry room and said the trip was exhausting. Now I knew why. Even the calendar app told the story, color-coded blocks labeled with initials that weren't mine. ZC meeting. Z, late lunch. Z, conference prep. Not one entry labeled Andrew. Then there was the money. That part came later, after I opened the family account we shared with Susan. Years ago, when her dad died, Susan had merged some savings into an investment portfolio Emily managed through a shared banking app. I hadn't checked it in months. There was no reason to. Until now. I opened the app and filtered recent transfers. There they were. 3 separate deposits from Susan's account to a different name, Zachary Collins. Each marked consultation or relocation support. Relocation support? I clicked into the banking history and realized something I hadn't considered. Susan wasn't just condoning this. She was facilitating it. Actively helping them. Financing it. She'd helped them secure a rental apartment, something modest on the east side of town, probably under the radar, nothing flashy. There were notes in her messages to Emily. He's a good match for you. Don't look back. I always thought Andrew was too quiet for your energy. He'll land on his feet. He's not built for confrontation. They had planned this. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was a strategy. And I was the placeholder. The bridge between who she had been and who she was becoming. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I stood up from the table, paced the kitchen, splashed cold water on my face like that would somehow erase what I'd just seen. But it wouldn't. It was burned into me now. When I sat back down, I opened the audio files. Yeah, they had those too. The tablet had a synced voice memo app, something I didn't even realize until I saw a folder labeled Staff Meeting Notes. But when I hit play, it wasn't a meeting. It was them. Zach and Emily. Talking quietly. Too quietly. Whispering like they were hiding in plain sight. He won't fight you. He'll take whatever deal you hand him if you make it sound fair. I don't want to hurt him. Then make him think he's in control. Let him think it's his idea. I paused the recording and sat back in the chair, heart pounding. This was warfare. Psychological. Intentional. Emily wasn't drifting away. She was constructing a whole new life. One where I didn't exist except maybe as a footnote. The stable ex who kept the lights on. I made a backup of everything. Saved it to an external drive and stashed it in my sock drawer. Then I started printing. Messages. Bank statements. Photos. I built folders. I labeled them. I used tabs. Because if they wanted to play this out like a chess match, fine. I wasn't a pawn. By the time the clock hit 2 a.m., I had assembled a full dossier. I laid everything out on the dining table, each piece of evidence like a puzzle fragment now locked into place. And in the center, the thread connecting it all, my wife. Not just cheating. Plotting. Not just hurting me. Replacing me. The next morning, I didn't say anything to her. She came down the stairs like she always did, yawning, checking her phone, acting like we were still us. "Sleep okay?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. "Yeah," I said. "Just stayed up late reading." She nodded absently, already halfway through a reply to someone on her phone. Probably Zach. Maybe Susan. Maybe both. And I realized then I was done pretending. Done being polite. Done being kept in the dark. Emily thought she had the upper hand. Thought I was too careful, too patient, too unwilling to draw a line. She was wrong. This wasn't going to be quiet. It wasn't going to be clean. But it was going to be smart. And it was going to be mine. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I didn't want revenge. Not really. What I wanted was clarity. Control. I'd spent months walking around inside a lie that felt like a home, and now I needed to tear it down brick by brick, room by room, until I could breathe again. That started with a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I wanted someone who didn't flinch. Someone who wouldn't pat me on the back and suggest we just try mediation. I spent the better part of a day calling names from firm directories, skimming reviews, reading testimonials from people who'd walked through hell and come out whole. Eventually, I found her, Lena McBride. Former litigator. Specializes in family law now. Her office was in a brick building downtown, tucked between a high-end tailor and a bank that probably wouldn't give me the time of day. Her assistant scheduled me for the following morning, and by 9 a.m., I was sitting in a sleek leather chair, holding a manila folder packed with evidence. Lena didn't waste time. She didn't offer condolences. She didn't tilt her head and ask how I was feeling. She just looked through the folder, flipping page by page, nodding to herself. Emails. Photos. Audio transcripts. Screenshot *TS of bank transfers from Susan to Zach. Location data from the hotel stays. Even calendar invites that lined up with canceled plans Emily had given me lame excuses for. When she got to the memo where Emily said letting Andrew keep the kids might be easier, she paused. "You don't have children?" she asked, looking up. "No," I said. "We were trying." She nodded once. Then that line speaks volumes. She's shaping narrative early. Preemptive manipulation. That's not casual cheating. That's planned exit. She flipped to the financials. "This money from her mother, what do you want to do with that?" "I want it traced. I want it tied to whatever lease they set up. And I want it submitted." She nodded. "We can do that." Then she leaned forward slightly, folding her hands. "Andrew, I'm going to be direct. You've got what most people in your position never get: clear evidence. Financial motive, coordination, conspiracy, betrayal. You're not here to ask for scraps. You're here to dictate terms." It was the first time someone put it like that. And they were right. We drafted a plan, no contact yet. Just documentation. Evidence. Leverage. Quiet precision. Lena's team would build the case privately and move only when we had maximum legal advantage. Custody if it came to it. Property. Spousal support. Reputation. I left her office with more than a strategy. I left with the first real sense of control I'd felt in months. Then came step 2, the private investigator. His name was Joel, a soft-spoken guy who looked like he stepped out of a detective novel, except he drove a Prius and had an app for everything. He met me at a cafe across from Emily's school, ordered black coffee, and took notes without interrupting. I showed him the pictures, the messages, the timeline. He asked a few logistical questions, then pulled out a tablet and scrolled through property records like it was second nature. "This rental," he said, turning the screen toward me. "Leased by Susan. But here's the kicker, it lists a second occupant under authorized visitors. Zachary Collins. Signed digitally." I stared at the screen. My throat was dry. "You want surveillance?" "Yes." He nodded. "We'll be discreet." By the end of that week, I had motion-activated photos of Zach entering and leaving the apartment at off hours. Emily's car parked outside. 2 trips together to a grocery store 20 minutes away. 1 midday rendezvous that lasted 2 hours captured on time-stamped footage. Joel also pulled text messages using software I won't even pretend to understand. Extracted deleted threads from a synced backup Emily had neglected to disable. In one of them, she wrote, "I think he knows. He looked at me different last night. Should I be worried?" And Zach replied, "Doesn't matter. He's not going to fight it. He'll go quietly. He always does." I kept that one printed and circled in red. I didn't respond emotionally. That was the key. I stayed patient. I acted like nothing was wrong. We still had dinner together. Still watched shows. Still talked about the future in vague, dishonest ways. And while she lied to my face, I built my case. Every transaction from Susan's account to Zach's cataloged. Every text implying deception archived. Every false meeting on her school calendar matched with photo evidence disproving it. Even her voice, recorded from a Bluetooth device synced to her car speakers. One conversation had her saying, "If this blows up, I'll say he's unstable. I'll tell them he's been checked out for months. He won't push back, he hates confrontation." I saved that 1 to 3 different drives. And then we prepared the nuclear option. Lena drafted legal documents, clean, devastating, irrefutable. A full confession clause tied to the divorce proceedings, pre-negotiated custody terms, asset division, and legal protections for me against false claims. It was all airtight, all ready to go. But before serving papers, I asked for something else. "Can we time it to hit everything at once?" I asked her. Not just legal. Personal. Professional. She raised an eyebrow. "You want coordinated exposure?" "Yes." She didn't blink. "We'll need an anonymous channel." So we created one. A secure email account. A hidden link to the folder containing evidence, sanitized and redacted where needed, but undeniable in content. The recipient list, the school board, the HR director at Emily's school, and the Parents Association president. The goal wasn't humiliation. It was illumination. People had the right to know who they'd put in charge of mentoring kids. By the end of the month, everything was in place. I had a folder on my desktop called Final Switch. One click and it would all activate emails, legal filings, press of the first domino. But I didn't click it right away. I waited. Waited for the moment where I could look her in the eye and know she thought she'd won. That she believed I was still in the dark. That her new life was locked and loaded. It came on a Wednesday. We were having dinner, leftovers, nothing fancy. She told me she'd been asked to mentor a new teacher. "Someone sees potential in me," she said, sipping wine. "I'm sure they do," I replied. She smiled like everything was fine. That night, while she slept, I sent the email. Then I walked into the living room, opened the manila folder I'd been hiding in my desk drawer, and placed the divorce papers on the coffee table. I put my wedding ring beside them. The next morning, I made coffee like always. When she came downstairs, still sleepy, still half-tethered to the fantasy she'd been building behind my back, she didn't notice anything until she reached for her mug. And then she saw it. The papers. The ring. My signature already inked on the last page. She froze. I didn't speak. I just handed her a USB drive. "What is this?" she asked, voice shaking. "Evidence," I said quietly. And then I walked out the door just as her phone started buzzing. The fallout had big asterisk N.